I'm Janelle Nanos, business reporter with the Boston Globe, and this is Bold Types, Conversations with Boston's Business Leaders. Today, we're talking with David Howse, Executive Director of Arts Emerson. So David, we are on Malcolm X Boulevard in front of a mural of Malcolm X. Can you talk with me a little bit about why you wanted us to come down to Dudley Square?
Being in and of the community is one of those things that's important for us. It's not about just having people come downtown to the theater, but it's also being in community with the people that we care so much about and want to actually experience the work that we're making in theater. And so this coming season, we've commissioned a piece called Detroit Red, which is a story of really an unearthing of a story about Malcolm X and his time in Boston, how these pivotal years were really the making of him. His Detroit Red was his sort of hustler name, and it was the making of his time here. And so it's three characters in the show, including the young Malcolm X, and his sort of struggles with coming to terms with his own sort of challenges as a human being. And it's a real important story that often gets overlooked. I mean, Malcolm X did spend a lot of time here, has a historic home here, has family still here, and it's one of the great movers and shakers that we all should be celebrating and being proud of, you know, all that he represented, and the fact that he had such an important time here in Boston is a story that we wanted to tell.
Thank you so much for having us here in the beautiful Cutler Majestic Theater. Give us a little bit of the lay of the land. What is that Arts Emerson does here in the city, and what are the theaters where all these magical plays happen?
We are dedicated to connecting communities, all communities, through stories that deepen and reveal our connection to each other. When you think about Arts Emerson, people often think about theater that's really pushing the boundaries. And our hope, though, in all the work we do is to look at the narratives of different perspectives and be able to observe those narratives, understand our relation to them, and actually connect more deeply across those differences.
Can you talk about some examples of where and how Boston was really also reflected in some of the programming that you put on the stage here?
We as an arts and cultural community have had a storied history when it comes to being inclusive and being welcoming for all people. And in spite of our best intentions, we haven't gotten it right yet. And so when Arts Emerson came online about 10 years ago, that was the same time when the city sort of declared itself as no longer a cultural majority. And so we thought, well, this is a new opportunity for us to use our platform, these amazing theaters here at Emerson College, where we're housed, to actually reimagine what an arts and cultural institution can be to and for its community. And we wanted to figure out if we could actually create a space where everyone, even those who have not always traditionally felt welcomed, could own these spaces and really belong here, and then to begin to demand work that they wanted to see on stage. And again, it was trying to create a microcosm of the city of Boston in any one of these institutions.
I think it's remarkable to think about putting things up on the stage that are more reflective of the city, but how do you also make sure that that's reflected in the seats?
Sounds quite simple. You know, if I put Black bodies or Asian bodies or the disabled community on the stage, people will just show up in the audience. It's not that easy. No, it's about authentic relationships, and it's about meaningful invitations, and it's also about a long journey. We understand that what we're trying to do is undo a body of history that has disserved us. And so we understand that's a long time journey, and so our commitment is not to put one show on stage that reflects your experience, but to commit to a series so that you begin to see yourselves on that stage more regularly and recognize the stories as your stories that you own. I often think about it as a toy store, right? We think about if we can actually show you yourself on stage, perhaps that's the toy that entices you to come in, and once you're in, you see all the different tools that are yours to actually play with.
So the MFA just experienced some challenges where a student group faced some racist comments from patrons and some staffers at the museum. Talk with me a little bit about that conversation internally and within the arts community, and how that presents both an opportunity and challenge going forward.
Incident of the MFA, as I've said before, was a gift. Was a gift, and one that we have to embrace and not try to push away and sort of deal with and hide, but one that we're lifting up to say, what is to be learned here? And for me, how do we create institutions both from an operational, organizational standpoint, but also from a constituent standpoint? And for me, it all goes back to our values. What are the shared values that we are agreeing to
in these spaces? How do we communicate that? How do we hold ourselves accountable to them? And how do we reinforce them every time? Everyone who speaks values is not excited about the change that those values might bring, right? And so we have to embrace that and understand that in order for progress to happen, sometimes there are things that we have to give up. And so those are the real conversations that I know people are having in their organizations, and conversations that we need to have in the city. What must we give up for change to happen?
We call this series Bold Types, so I always like to ask, can you talk about a moment in your career where you've had to make a bold decision?
I will go back to what I felt was a bold moment when I was running the Boston Children's Chorus. So this was an organization that was very new, and we knew that we wanted to punch above our weight. We wanted to signify and signal to the city that we were an institution that was worthy of attention, worthy of support, and worthy of their being. And so very early on, we made the decision to take, 20 kids that we had just known for like 6 months to Japan, like on this international tour, without parents, without chaperones. And for me at the time, that was like, we are crazy. Like, what do we know about? But I think it's this idea of punching above our weight. There are things that we as leaders, as organizations, are supposed to be doing, and that we can be very safe in those spaces, but oftentimes it's being able to punch above your weight, taking on a project that's probably outside of your scope or a little bit farther beyond the safety net that you'd want it to be.
In addition to the work that you do with Arts Emerson, you've also been really active in talking about race. And not just talking about race, but talking about race, and finding ways to have conversations that are sometimes uncomfortable but are necessary. How do you think the arts community and the venues and forums that you create can provide an opportunity for us to have that conversation, to talk about our biases, acknowledge them, and work through them?
I feel like we're in a moment now, and have been, so this is not new. The moment we're in is not new. It's just becoming a little bit more visible in ways that are both challenging, deeply challenging, but also wonderful. And I think at the same time we have fewer and fewer places where we're intersecting with others. I say Boston has a high bump rate, meaning we see each other, but we don't actually have places for sort of common spaces, public spaces, where we can actually engage our differences in meaningful ways. Oftentimes it's like inappropriate to have certain conversations in the workplace. It's inappropriate, but I feel like the arts, in many ways, creates that forum naturally, being led by the artistic experience and that creator to actually provoke us or push us or challenge us in a way that really requires us to sort of unpack that with someone who's different. And you'll see a lot of the programming, not only at Arts Emerson, but in other spaces that actually have now what the talkbacks, which are not new things, but their talkbacks are actually differently focused. It's really trying to unearth some of the themes that were in the play or in the piece of art or in the music, to actually understand sort of what does this mean for us now, and how are we navigating that together, or what did you see that I not see? And let's talk about that difference. So I feel like we are trying to make that space more. We've got to do more to build the trust with the people, to say that when you come here, this is a space that's not ever safe. Where are the places that are safe? But it's a protected space. It's a space that we've created for this kind of dialogue, and we're going to do our best to honor your difference, and we ask the same.